Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Everyday Excellence. I'm your host, Todd Baldwin, and today we have Brent Garrett, the owner of Sirius Plumbing and Air Conditioning. And also, Brent is a small business coach, been working with entrepreneurs for years, and you can find his business, and the coaching site at brentgarrett.com. Brent, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, Todd. Thanks for having me on today.
You bet. I was excited to have you on. We're coming off a long holiday, Memorial Day weekend. So we were just both chatting about how our Monday slash Tuesday was going. So glad this is in the afternoon versus the morning. Let's just put it that way.
Absolutely.
So Brent, let's dive in. I'm just curious for our listeners hearing about Sirius Plumbing and Air Conditioning for the first time. Give us a quick overview of what you do and what areas do you serve?
Sure. Thanks, Todd. We are a plumbing and air conditioning residential service repair and replace company, and we service in the Dallas Fort Worth area. If you're in Texas, you might know about a 10-mile radius of North Dallas and a little bit into Plano and what they call Collin County.
Yeah, yeah, very, very familiar. As you know, I'm in Southlake, Texas, in Dallas Fort Worth. I'm on the Tarrant County side, but very, very familiar with your territory. And also, it's good to talk to someone local, right? We'll call you local because we're in the DFW area. So, I'm curious. I want to dive into a lot, several different topics with you today. I want to talk more about the plumbing business. I want to talk about your coaching business, and I also want to give you a chance to talk about your latest project, which is a new book you said that should be coming out in the next 10 days called 30 Days to a Better Business, which is focused on the skilled trades, referring to electrical, plumbing, and AC. So we got a lot to talk about, Brent. So let's dive in
Here we
and
go.
let's rewind the clock and talk about how you got started in your entrepreneurial journey. I know you've been around the plumbing and air conditioning most of your life. Give us just I guess a coffee shop version of how you got started in that trade.
Yeah, when you say rewind the clock, I'm 61, Todd. So,
Okay, all
and
right, well,
if
I'm
we go back to when I got in the plumbing business, it was at the age of 12 from my dad on the end of a shovel,
well, there you
and
go.
he taught the work ethic and in the old school way as only a drill sergeant can. And he uh, he was in the Korean War and came back. Went to work in a hammer factory and then got in the business as an apprentice, and he never left the plumbing business. What I would call, kind of a 3 truck small business owner, and put 4 kids through school, and we're first generation graduates, and that's really how I got in the business. I went to school, got an accounting, marketing degree, but broke dad's heart when I said, "Look, I want to get back in the plumbing business." We were never going to work together. I think we established that early on, but I owe him a lot for teaching me the business.
I love that. I like the fact that, you mentioned, you put I think you have 4 kids through school, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah, so no, it kinda resonates with me. My daughter just graduated college, and my son just finished his first year of college. So, proud that they're going to school and all that jazz as well. You mentioned when we had our little prep call that, you opened your first company in Richardson, Texas, with 1 truck and about 5,000, right?
yeah. I had
Okay.
5,000 bucks. I
What do you
took a
remember most about those early days?
Yeah. I had a 5,000 bucks and a 50-page business plan. I had already um, went to work for New York Life, learned how to sell with the intent that I was always going to own my own business. And I bought an Astro van. We started it in '94 and started running the first calls from the truck. I'm licensed actually in both trades for plumbing and air conditioning in the state of Texas. And about 5 years later, we grew it to about 15 employees, and I sold that company to a company called Service Master. They they back then they owned True Green, Chemlon, Mary Mates, um, uh, American Residential Services. You might have remembered True Green, Chemlon. They were a Fortune 300 company that owned residential services. So
Okay.
yeah,
That name
that's how
sounds
we did it.
familiar. the name, what was the parent name? Service, what'd you say it was?
It was Canyon Creek Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. It was the largest homeowners association in Dallas. There was like
Okay.
2,000 members, so
You mentioned when we chatted that you describe yourself as an accountant trapped in a plumber's body. So I'm just curious, how's that combination shaped the way you run your business today?
well, you know what? I use my accounting degree every day. And there are 2 things that I always say that a business owner can't delegate to anybody else, and that's the ownership of the financials and the culture of the business. If you don't set the culture for the business, somebody's gonna set it for you, and culture is so important, and so are those financials because, as you know, in small business, cash is king.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. If your cash is low, you're gonna have a problem sooner than later. So I would agree. Cash is definitely king. Just to kind of roll back and finish up those early days. I'm curious because you were running the calls when you first started, right? I mean, you were the
Sure.
technician. So
Yeah.
when did you realize you were just not a technician, but truly a business owner?
You know, I think I evolved to that, and there are 5 stages to any kind of entrepreneur ownership, and, I think that first level, I was certainly a solopreneur because there was nobody else in the business but me. Um, then you hire a couple folks, and you realize that you're, you know, working out in the field, but there are things going on in the office, and you really hit that first wall where you're starting to team the business. And funny story, Todd. I originally, whenever there was a problem in the office, and we were at 2, 3, 4 trucks, the first thing I would do, which is the last thing I needed to do, was hop in the truck, go fix the problem.
Hmm.
And the only way I broke myself of that was I gave all my tools away. So it's kind of like that burn the boats thing, right? The army takes land, burn the boats, can't go backwards. I couldn't go and fix it. I had to coach people through that. And that helped me move from owning a job to owning a business, which was a long path. But I think that's where you're headed with that.
Yeah, yeah. Just to get to the other side, would you really? I guess as business owners, one of the biggest problems we're always working in the business versus on the business, but
Absolutely.
I think that's was kind of your path to get to the other side, right? Where you're more on the business versus in the business. You had an interesting phrase, messy middle, that you had mentioned that I liked, and you said a lot of contractors hit the messy middle. What does that look like in real life? What give us a little. What does that phrase mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is that business continues to grow. And most skilled trades owners are really good at what they do, fixing things. They're good communicators. They're above average at sales. And so when you do good, honest work, you do a good job. And what happens is you're going to grow the business through word of mouth. And and they get to a certain level. What happens is you get to 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, and you start working for everybody else but yourself. And
Mhm.
you your answer to growing is to just work longer, harder hours. And these companies hit a messy middle where, gosh, I didn't sign on to do accounting and payroll and HR and computers and price books, and now I've got to market's what I've heard to grow the business. And what happens is they work through that and get to a point where they're actually less profitable at that level than they were when they had 2 or 3 trucks because and we can dive into this thing called Parkinson's law, but what happens is there starts to become this inefficiency within the group and you just can't nail it down. And then what happens is for that owner, one of the things that keeps the business running is the sales, and that's the last thing they're doing. So sales drop, expenses go up, margins get tighter. And now, if I don't have a handle on my financials, I could very well be at risk. And that's when companies tend to get stuck or go bankrupt.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense. You talked about also, and I think this kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. We're kind of diving into this coaching experience of yours as well. But um, you mentioned helping business owners get to the next bend in the river, which I got to say, you had a lot of, you had some really cool sayings there or theories or however you want to word that. But I like this one because I never heard it. The next bend in the river, right? Instead of trying to solve everything at once, how do you help them simplify the next step?
Yeah, I think what I try to do when I'm coaching, business owners, I try to say, "Hey, look, we're trying to get to the ocean. Every ocean starts with a stream, and we don't wanna worry about getting all the way to the ocean. Let's just get to the next bend in the river,
Hmm.
and we'll just every 90 days, we'll make progress." The first thing that we have to do, is understand what the core skill level is of that leader, and then find out what the most important thing that needs to be done that they shouldn't be doing, and offboard that, but never leave the fact during that messy middle that they are the leader of the company and probably the person who sells the company most or best to a client. And here's the other important one is to a new employee that's joining the team because
Sure.
those are the two most important sales they'll make. And and we say, hey, look, if we keep getting to the next bend in the river, we're going to make it to where we no longer own a job, we own a business. That next big phase is when you start to coach the coaches.
I got that. If there was a contractor listening who feels stretched thin right now, what is one thing you might coach them that they need to stop ignoring?
Well, first thing I'm going to do is say, look, what got you here is a huge amount of success. And that messy middle, sometimes a contractor will look at it and go, you know what? I'm just going to go back to when I had 3 trucks and I'm going to just make money that way. And I'm never going to get to that level of sales, which that might be the right answer for some, but it doesn't have to be that way. 80% of the businesses never get more than 1.5 million in sales. It's a $125 billion industry, and 15% of the contractors that own the companies or that are over that 1.5 million are specifically doing things differently than the 80%. But the first thing they have to do, first thing I do is I try to get that, 4-inch conversation going in between the ears to catch the heart and have them keep growing their business. We just have to make sure that we don't neglect sales. And sales is different than marketing.
Right.
And sometimes a contractor will look at marketing like an expense rather than an investment. And they need to be strategic about what they do to make their phone ring. And those are probably the three things. Let's get the head right, get it connected with the heart, get you to believe in yourself. And then you said it best, get to the next bend in the river.
I like a lot of that. I like the fact that when you're working with new clients that you kind of start off by, if I heard you right, reminding them how much success they've had to this point to get to where they are, right? Because I think I was just thinking this while you were talking, coaching, asking for help can be a hard thing, right? For a contractor or
Very
real estate
hard.
business
Yeah.
owner. Hey, I need help. It's kind of like going to therapy, right? I need help. But uh, I like that because, hey, they're vulnerable. They've asked for help. And then you're right off the bat. Hey, look, you've done a lot of right things. You've had a lot of success just to get to where you are. And your job is to, or I guess your goal is to just start helping them understand how to take the next steps and maybe not try to do it all at one time. I love that next bend in the river. That's it just kind of simplifies things, right? Like, hey, I don't got to do it all. I don't got to fix everything today, right? Let's
Yeah.
focus on these tasks and get just take it step by step. You've mentioned culture several times, right? And you brought up when we were talking earlier, you brought up Peter Drucker's line that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, what does culture mean inside Sirius Plumbing and Air Conditioning? Let's talk about
Hey,
your own personal business.
Todd, you're 100% right. We want to talk about culture. Can I clarify one thing about my coaching? I've lived every one of those steps and I almost had to file bankruptcy, not on my first business, but my second one. So I had to tuck my pride and I had to go back and relearn where I made my mistakes. So I don't want the listener to think, oh my gosh, this guy has just zipped through life to 61 and never made a mistake. I was very close. In my book, I start the book off where at 2 a.m. I was staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I was going to explain that to my wife, my kids, my vendors. Sales got us out of that and we made it. But I had to make some real serious life choices. And you just hit it best. You got to tuck that pride and say, you know what, I made a mistake. Just get back up. And so, on to the culture
Mhm.
thing. I just want to make sure that your listeners know I I have had
So
my
no,
bumps
that's
in
a
the
great
road.
point.
Yeah. So um,
Every
I do believe that one of
I
the
think
pieces, one of those bends in the river is culture. Because if you're going to scale the business, and I had to learn this trial and error, was that to be a leader and get people to follow, you have to be clear with your communication. There is something that makes every small business owner successful, and it's unique to them. And first thing we want to do is find out what their value system is. And we take those values and those become value statements and a culture statement. And what you are doing in that, and shoot, I've got it right here on my desk. It's a laminated sheet of what every team member carries around. It's our culture. It's our why. If you can't communicate that to your team and they can't understand it and you've got it where it's easy for them to see it, they have to come to a meeting, every meeting with this, because we're tying them back to that. What you're doing is coaching them up about how you believe in running the business. And I'll just give you one. Um, if somebody in our company says, "Hey, I've got this problem. We kind of screwed it up, or we made a mistake, or the perception of the customer is we made a mistake," I turn to them, and now they just go, "I knew you were going to say that." I said, "What would you do for your grandmother?" And they go, and sometimes their head drops, and I said, "You knew the answer to this. It's right here. Do your best, do the right thing, and treat people fairly." The leader has to communicate culture because culture will scale. And when we're talking about moving from the messy middle to coaching the coaches, that whole team has to know what you believe. And here's the key: if you can't live it, they won't buy it.
that is a great point. If you can't live it, they won't buy it. It's, kind of proofs in the pudding too, right? And also, I like that little part before you dove into culture, just talking about your own past and history, because what resonates there is so many business owners. We all face challenges and cash flow struggles, and that's why I like talking to entrepreneurs because I can relate to them and typically get some good value. And a lot of times it's talking about, challenges really more so I find than victories, but to just be open and honest about that, I really appreciate that. I think the listeners will appreciate that too, because it lets them know, hey, it's not just me, like, "Oh, wow," because we get especially with social media, all this glamour of being a business owner, and it's just so not true, most of it,
Well,
right?
yeah, there are two problems that every business owner has. Two problems until they're done working and done owning it. And I want to say this. A friend of mine, Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, said, being an entrepreneur is a life sentence. Okay. If it's really in your blood, you're going to do it forever. Well, the two things that you have to solve a problem of that probably are with you most of the time is you're undercapitalized and you don't have an exit strategy. Okay. And so those are things that are way out there when you start talking about building a legacy. But small businesses tend to be undercapitalized. And that's an $8 finance word for I don't have enough cash to grow my business. Or I'm always chasing payroll and that kind of thing. That's a real problem. And I don't think that ever really goes away. Now I like to say as an accountant, if I don't have cash flow problems, I'm not making my money work hard enough for me. So, and that's a different philosophy because you don't want cash sitting on the sidelines, but you don't want to put your business at jeopardy. So, liquidity and exit strategy are the problems for every entrepreneur to solve long term.
Yeah, it's cash flow is an interesting thing. You mentioned, what did you say? If you don't have a cash flow problem, you're not what
Your
was it?
money's not working hard enough
It's not
for you.
working hard enough. Yet you wanna make sure your cash is good because cash is definitely king. Um, and I mean, being a business owner 20 years, I mean, we've gone up and down with cash. It just seems to be the nature of the business, right? Being an entrepreneur, and sometimes things, work beautifully as planned, sometimes they go really, horribly horrible as far as,
Well,
cash
I
flow
don't
can
wanna
go.
go down the accounting trail, but I wanna make sure that everybody's clear. My money might be working for me because I'm taking earnings out of the business into an appreciating asset, like maybe some rental property or something like that, that over time is creating collateral for working capital in my business. So, and those are the things. Once we get past coaching the coaches, then we start owning a job, and we can start building the legacy. We can start talking about charity and what are we setting up for our kids, and what's your exit strategy, and those types. That's when it really gets to be fun because that's when marriages start to thrive in small business because there are a lot of working couples
Yeah,
in the entrepreneurial reign.
that is something I haven't explored. I've been in business with family, but my wife's always kinda been out of the business. She's helped me with certain projects or this or that, but I've tried to always keep that separate. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's how we've handled it. But I've dealt with so many husband and wife combos over the years that have had a lot of success, and I think I've seen a lot of struggle there too. I think I've seen it both.
But I need to say that Jenny Garrett is a big part of our success here, and, I'm her husband. I mean it that way. Um, but we've worked together for over 20 years, and
Great.
yeah, and there are a lot of life lessons there. She and I are you didn't ask me, but I wanna go ahead and say we're writing another book called 30 Days to a Better Marriage That Works. We're just talking about the things of what married couples, if they are gonna choose to work together, there's some real, defined ways to make that successful, and, did you know that married what they call couplepreneurs have the highest divorce rate, higher than second marriages? You've got a better chance at the blackjack table at being successful there than staying married working with your spouse.
Doesn't surprise me. Just
Boy, have we gone, man, we never thought we were gonna be in that zone. I'll reel it back in, Todd, sorry, but hey,
no, that's a good
I did
topic.
wanna say, I am not the one that's only the reason for the success at the owner level. My wife, Jenny, has been my partner through business and life. Been great.
Well, you need every man needs a good partner, so that's great to hear. I did not know that stat about the divorce rate with couples, working together, but I believe it. I definitely believe it. Because business is hard. It's hard enough as it is, and then when you're working together and you're married, and marriage is so hard as it is, I could definitely see how that stat can be high as far as divorce rate. Let's talk a little bit about sales and leads. 'Cause you have some great thoughts on leads too. And, when we were talking about it, you were saying, you can have, drive all the leads you want, right? But if the team lets them roll off the table, it doesn't matter. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, first of all, if we go into the marketing, lane, the most important thing I'd wanna share with anybody who's investing, and I'm being, intentional about that word.
Sure.
You would never go into the stock market and think that every time you spent a dollar or 2 would come back.
Right.
And yet many people I talk to about marketing think transactional. One thing I learned in my marketing studies early was a really good marketing plan is like an investment over time. If you looked at the Dow, it's going up over time. But man, if you looked at any given week, it looks like an EKG and not a good heart. I mean, it's just up and down, right? And so on the marketing side, in our business, really what we want to do is be visible in a consistent way with our clients. So TOMA or top of mind awareness, those things. Man, if I'm one of those 3 truck companies, I'm always wearing a hat to my social events, or I am the brand. And so, and that's a low cost way, and definitely need a brand. But when we start moving towards sales, great companies have a consistent client experience. One of the things I want to stress with the people I work with in this business is the last thing they want to be seen as is a salesperson.
Mhm.
And so one of the things I talk to them about is a client experience, a great client experience. And inside of that is our sales process, and we call it needs-based selling. We're going to build rapport. I mean, it's so simple, it's crazy, but we're going to build rapport. We're going to ask questions because we're there to solve a problem. The third thing we're going to do is provide options. We're going to use a good, better, best model. And then we're not going to sell them anything. We're going to help them make the best choice for their home.
Sure.
And we're going to guide them and help them make a good buying decision. I always like to say people love to buy, they hate to be sold. And so if we're not clear with our team members about a consistent client experience where we're running a process that doesn't make a technician or even the owner feel like they're being a salesperson, what we want them to do is have the mindset of being an expert, asking good questions. And here's the thing, um, we're going to write those answers down so we can visit those back with the customer once we find out what the problem is. And then we use what's called a must, should, could sheet. It's a Harvard business study called Good, Better, Best. Hey, we got to do this to make this air come back on. One of the things you should do is probably think about getting these things cleaned and maintenance. And I'm making stuff up, Todd, but through any process, there are things you should do. And then sometimes there are things you could do. And that necessarily doesn't mean that that could is something that you have to think about right now. But you know what? This is a big expense, probably 3 to 6 years away from having to make this expense. This is generally how much it is. Might want to set up a fund for that. And we'd love to be your service company. That's that's how we don't want to look at a lead. And what I see, I know I'm starting to ramble. This is an important
You know,
part.
this is all good stuff.
Yeah.
All good
So
info.
so the main thing I want is a mindset of a technician or a business owner, and it can be taught, is take your mind off of the outcome and focus on your process. Build rapport, ask good questions, provide solutions, and just help them buy. Help them make a decision. Be the expert, answer the question. Could you imagine going to um, your doctor, not greeted by a nurse, no blood pressure. The doctor walks in, you know you've got a problem with your ankle. He walks in and says, "Hey, I've got you scheduled for a heart transplant tomorrow."
Yeah.
That's the way some contractors approach these service calls.
Yeah, I think, service contractors have gotten a bad rep, or companies are being high pressure sales or not being ethical. So obviously building rapport, building trust is huge. I agree. People hate to be sold, but they love to buy. Giving them options. So much of what you're talking about was sound like my journey of all these years of me selling and being, a salesperson or in that field. Even as a business owner, you're still involved in sales. It's like it never goes away, right? But yeah, I think that's all great content. I love the part too about business owners and marketing, right? So many business owners just dread marketing or feel like they're just spending money when in actuality it is an investment. And it is a lot of the campaigns we run, it is like the stock market. As long as our campaigns are trending upwards, we're heading in the right direction, right? Because no campaign's gonna come out of the gate and just be lights on or on fire. Sometimes we'll get up to a really hot start, but I'd almost prefer not to because it sets maybe a false expectation that it's easier. This is the way it's always going to be. But I don't know why so many business owners are afraid to invest in marketing. And I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If if I gave Brett, if you gave me $100 today, and I turned around and gave you $300 back, would you not take it? Of course you would. Or would you say, "Oh, that's only, 2 times return. That's not enough." But that's what a lot of business owners will say when they look at marketing numbers. It's, I need a bigger return." Well, that's what we're
It
working on.
we
It's a
could
it's a
probably
long-term strategy, right? It's a long-term play, but
we could spend 3 days talking about marketing,
sure.
and that's what you do, Todd, I know. But when you talk to a customer or a potential client, they may be coming to you with a very acute need of, "Hey, look, I need sales." But they say, "I want advertising," and they're thinking transactional. And the first step for them in many ways is to build a brand that the customer recognizes and recognizes it over time, and they've never spent time doing that. And I'm not saying that's first step, but certainly that's the way that you get top of mind awareness. Well, that has nothing to do with making the phone ring. And there are certainly transactional things that we do to get the customer to that. But I think what I was saying about the falling off the table is you could do all that and make the phone ring, but if your client experience isn't there and you don't have a proven process or a repeatable process, I should say, then you really are wasting your investment because we're getting to the magic moment of your
Sure.
tech in front of the customer in the home, and we just laid an egg.
Yeah, I don't know how many phone calls I've listened to in marketing. We started doing call tracking back in the Yellow Page days, way back when it was brand new technology, but, so many bad experiences over the phone or just letting leads fall off the table, as you would say, because no process, no structure, no, good, better, best sales scenario. And it's frustrating as marketers because my joke was always they want us to make the phone ring. They want us to answer the call, book the call, go do the job. Right. And, all my job is to make the phone ring, right. Or get a web
Yeah.
form. But, the way some of these business owners act or listen or talking to them, you would think that's really what they want us to do. But yeah, we could talk marketing all time, all day. That magic moment you mentioned, is that the whole process I guess you talked about a few minutes ago? I mean, when you're in
Well,
front of the
I
customer, you got this magic moment. What should happen in that moment?
played quarterback in college, okay? And in the office in my business, all the folks in the office from my level all the way through, we're all linemen, we're blocking,
Mhm.
right? Our technicians are the quarterbacks, and they're in that magic moment in front of the customer. Man, what their uniform looks like, how organized they are, what the truck looks like when they pull up, and when they talk to the customer, that's the magic moment. That's when the customer is looking for us to be the expert, and the customer can sense when somebody's focused on the outcome versus solving a problem for them in the home. And it sounds so simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy when an owner's in that messy middle and they're trying to figure out how to get to that next level. That's another piece of how you scale the business, because if you can't repeat the client experience, you know, you don't go to McDonald's looking for a Whopper,
Right.
right? Yeah, you go because you look for, yeah, I think somebody, I did not say this, but McDonald's is an incredibly consistent, not so great burger. I mean, you know what you're gonna get, right?
Sure.
It's
They sell a lot of them.
I think Michael Gerber said, "McDonald's is not a restaurant, it's a filling station. It's where you take your kids to fill them up on a trip and get to the next destination." I mean, but it's consistent. Hey, there's you're not gonna get a Happy Meal at Burger King. I mean, those kids are all, I think McDonald's does a great job of branding that, Happy Meal.
Well, they
Good
did a
lord.
great job with that. Yeah, they sold a cajillion of them. Let's talk a couple more minutes on marketing because you made an interesting comment too. I keep going back to our prep call. It was probably one of my favorite prep calls that I've had. But um, you said hope is not a plan, right? When it comes to marketing, what do you see contractors doing wrong with marketing?
Um, wow. Let me start with hope isn't a plan. And what I mean by that is throwing money at a problem without the research and understanding of what you're trying to achieve. And that's with your marketing partner. Whoever's helping you with your marketing in your business, you have to be clear with them about what your outcome and objective is. Throwing money at SEO without all those supporting things around it and a campaign that you can sustain doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And so your marketing is based on what size your company is, but it always needs to be a percent of your revenue. Okay. And one of the things I think I talked earlier in our call today about the 80 and 20 and the 20% or 15% that are controlling, and I don't think I made it real clear. It's $125 billion industry a year. Think about that. It's huge.
Yeah,
15% of that group control over half of that revenue. And to a number, that group spends about 8 to 12% of their total revenue in marketing. And and that's usually pretty doable for a company. There are folks spending 25 to 30% of their total revenue on marketing, but they're not sure what it's doing for them. I think the 20 to 30% folks are hoping that something will stick.
sure.
Um, that's what I mean by hope's not a plan.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. So obviously you're a big believer in a marketer. You mentioned SEO, search engine optimization. What are you guys doing for AEO, which answer engine optimization, the AI side of the house now? That's obviously you can't go hardly an hour in the day without hearing about AI. But and you told me you'd worked with the same SEO company for 5 years. So what plans has he put in place, or have they put in place, or have y'all
Yeah,
discussed
that's a
about showing
great
up?
question. I First of all, LSAs, SEO, we're on a Google platform, so I'm going to handle the what are we doing on the marketing side for that first. First of all, SEO is also important for your existing clients to easily find you. Here's the big point, and refer you,
Yeah, great point.
and refer you. So it's not just about transactional. Here again, marketing to me is everything that the client or prospect or internally your internal customers, your team members see, hear, smell, feel, or touch. Okay. And you think about that, that's a big list, right?
Right.
So, does your hat on the tech look like your website out there for the world to see? When you call in and we say we're serious, serious company, not serious like really invested. But when you call, does that logo match up? Because guess what? Strangers are dangerous. And I knock on your door and I see a great website, I see the truck, but I don't see a uniform on a guy that matches that. What am I thinking? I don't know if he really works for the company.
Sure.
You wear a name badge on your shirt that, not a name badge, but a badge that clips on your shirt. 80% of the community out there thinks you've been checked and cleared. They associate that with somebody in a hospital. Would you ever think about somebody admitting you or working on? So those all need to work together. Number one.
Yeah.
So
Great point.
SEO is not just, and marketing is not just about transaction. On the AI side, we were early to the game. We're on a Google, um, used to be Workspace. We're now Google Admin, but we're on a total Google environment.
Yeah.
So we were early to Gemini, and we were starting to learn how to. This is really cool how I can clean up my bad English and clean up my correspondence, speed it up. But we're now at a point where we're looking at Claude and uh, AI agents, Codex. We're on a VoIP system, so we're seriously moving toward getting bots to learn how we communicate with the customer because we believe that if we're going to stay in that 15% within the next 2 years, we really need to be able to book that client through AI without them feeling that too much within 30 seconds of their making a contact with us. or we believe that we may not be 100% in the game. Um, so, and I may have done a deep dive on AI there, but not with you. But I'm just saying that's the way we're thinking. We're thinking 2, 3 years out. Now, the good thing about our industry is if we're a few years ahead of technology, I'm sorry, if we're 2 or 3 years behind technology, we're probably about 6, 7, 8 years ahead of our industry. And I like those odds, and that's where we wanna stay, so
Yeah, a little bit slower moving industry to adapt, but every business needs a strategy on not only how to utilize AI to make business and operations more efficient, but how to show up right in these searches, these long tail questions that are being asked on these LLMs, ChatGPT or Claude, and then also Google is making a huge update. You know, they're going to be changing the search bar is going away. There's major changes coming in Google, and so it's hard to believe you're going to see a website traffic go way down because, but they've still got to reference answers, right? I mean, it's a simple. If I'm searching AI mode or just regular search, Google became Google, right? Because they put up great content no matter what you were searching, and relevant content. They stole the search game. So they still got to reference businesses, right? If someone's looking for an air conditioning contractor, and they may type in instead of AC near me or AC repair near me, um, a long sentence or two or three of what their experience is, right? Or what's going on, what the problem is. But so just having FAQs, having really authoritative content, trust signals, all of that is so important right now. And if you're showing up now strong on Google, that's kind of resonating over to AI. But I think there'll be a slow shift of things that really need to be done. It reminds me of, 15 years ago, people were like, how do I show up on Google organically, right? And so um, a lot of the same type of conversations, but different strategies. You guys have great rankings. I mean, I looked at your stuff just at a
thank
real
you.
high level. I mean, I plugged in domain overview on SEMrush or SEMrush, and kudos to you guys because you've got a ton of top three, and more importantly, you got a lot of what I think people forget about that position 4 through 10, which is still page one. So whoever's doing your work, I'd say they're doing a good job. If you've been with them for 5 years, then you must be happy too, Brent. But
Yeah, and I remember way back when I had that conversation with that individual, I it's a partnership, and you've gotta believe, and you gotta go through the up and downs, and you've gotta commit to the overall strategy and plan. The other piece I was gonna say to you, Todd, about marketing and AI, and I think more importantly now in our lane, never more than before, because I remember, I'm 61, so I remember back when it was really cool to have a website, but that website was doing nothing for you, but it was really cool,
yeah,
okay?
yeah,
I think we've returned to where it's never more important that your website, but it's not just what they see, it's the engine running behind it and how
100%.
it's communicating. And if I were, in your business and, they're in the other 48 contiguous states, wherever your listeners are, I would be talking to my marketing person or my chief marketing company to say, is my website up to date and is it driving LSAs, SEO, and are we communicating our message? And I don't understand that. Okay. And I think that's the other piece about the business owners that are in that 15%. You hit it early in the call. We got to tuck our pride and go, you don't have to know everything about the business. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. You have to have the smartest people around you in the room and be people that you can trust. And I don't have enough time in the day to understand. And I talk to my marketing. He gets me into a conversation. I say, stop, stop. I can't take anymore. I know you're an inch wide and a mile deep. I only want to be an inch deep and a mile wide because I've got other stuff in the business. But I have to know and trust that you're doing the things that are on my behalf. And man, that's another hope is not a plan comment right there.
It's it's, you mentioned the word partnership there too, or partner with your marketing company, and it's one of the things we always talk about, in early conversations. That is our whole goal. as an agency is to develop partnerships with our clients. And that's when the real work, I think, success starts to really happen is when you are that coach, you are that marketing arm, and the business owner trusts you and shares with you, and goals and strategies and what we're trying to achieve. But that's how we, if we can get to that partnership level, that we'll have a client. 3, 4, 5, 6.
That
We've got some clients 10 years now. Been this 10 years. That's a long time.
that partners well, it says a lot about your company. That partnership is as important as your attorney, your banker, and your CPA. I just, especially when you start owning your business, meaning you're moving to, yeah, I don't mind sharing. We run about 17 trucks. Um, we do a little over 5 million. We're on our way to 10, but we're going to be the best before we're the biggest. But I'm telling you that your marketing arm is one of the most important pieces to your growth and scaling in your business.
I'm gonna make some video shorts out of that and just replay it to leads and new things. Well, every business sees it. I tell them all the time, look, if it's not us, we do a website audit. It's like, hey, look, these need fixed. This right here needs fixed without a doubt. Whether it's us or not, find someone that that can fix these items for you because your website's hurting you. And it's true, your whole digital foundation, your website just is that foundation, right? It's got to be done right. It's got to be updated regularly. It needs to be worked on continuously, and you need to be testing all the time to see what moves the needle. And as long as you're up and down and you're moving in the right direction, that's fine. You're going to have dips, and when they always say, "Hey, look, we're going to have a dip," but we're big on status calls. That's another thing. Talk to your marketing agency. Know what's you don't have to know everything, but know um, stay up with your leads, right? Every marketing agency should be able to tell you exactly where all your leads come from, every channel, LSA, Google Ads, Facebook, SEO. That was organic. That came off Bing, or maybe it's Yahoo, or I see some off DuckDuckGo. Probably going to be mostly Google. That was Google Business Profile. That was Chat GPT. And then what was the quality of those leads? And then what did those leads turn into revenue wise? And I would say 95% of business owners have no idea what kind of revenue their leads and marketing is generating. Therefore, they have no idea what the ROI is, but yet they're very easy to say it's just not working, or what, don't feel like I'm getting enough leads. And so anyway, now you got me preaching, or
You're
rambling
right.
on, but yeah, cause it's refreshing when you talk to someone hey, this is extremely important. And I've never had anybody say it's as important as your, relationship with your banker or, your doctor or whatnot, but this is your business and you've got to have sales and leads. Great stuff there on marketing. I could talk to you all day about marketing. So let's switch gears. Tell me about your book that is 10 days out um, from being published and out for consumption through the public, right? Tell us a little bit about what the book's about and what your goals were, when you set out to write it.
Yeah, I will tell you that after I sold my business, I had started another company. I was on the road 120 days a year. I was doing workshops, kitchen table sales, working with techs and business owners for a company called Train. They're the air conditioning company. I was coaching what they call boot camps. That led to some keynote. And I'll try to make this really quick, but I came home and literally the lights went off in the office in our plumbing and air conditioning business. It was a new one we were starting, and we were almost $1 million in debt. I had this unbelievable speaking business going and all that kind of stuff, and was doing really well there. But there was something else nagging at me. I had a 4 and a 6-year-old, and it was a wake up call for me. I had to stop and look at my entire life and say, this is this is out of sync. My priorities were way out of sync. And I totally shut down the speaking business 120 days a year and said, I've got to fix the business. But the big one I said was, I'm not going to be a suitcase dad. And so we got that fixed. We, our kids, we certainly, we hope we weren't helicopter parents, but we were deeply engaged in what they were doing. And our business, I really held back the growth. It was a lifestyle business. But I said, if I ever get back in this and do it again, I'm not doing it for the money. I want to help business owners grow. So I wrote this book. It's one of a 4-book series called 30 Days to a Better Business. And it's real simple. It's 30 days, give me 10, 15 minutes. It's 1,200 words a chapter. Each week is, first one is on sales because that covers a multitude of sins. It's what got me out of almost bankruptcy. The second one is on leadership because everything we've talked about, culture, that it's culture and what are the keys to leadership. And then the third week is business planning. So we're talking about scaling the business. And those first 3 weeks are a dialogue or a narrative between a sage contractor and a young guy. And they go through a narrative of each day going through some conversations. Then the last 2 weeks, it's about accounting KPIs and having good numbers. And then put it all together that last week. And it's written at a reading level where anybody could pick this up. This was written for somebody who may not have read a book since high school after English. I mean, I'm not asking so, and it's going to drive people to think about their business. But what's woven in there is all the mistakes I've made and all the things that I've done. But the one thing I want is for people to understand that if you make the right choices in life, your business will fall in line. If you don't get that straight and you don't understand what the purpose of the business is, just like for Jenny and I, it was a lifestyle business. The business needs to be taken care of where you're taking care of those needs and it'll take care of you. But I'm going to tell you, I think if there's any parting thing about the book, it's, I thought I was putting my bags on the floor because I had to save my business. But what it really did was it saved my life because that one choice, I've got a 26-year-old on the other side of this wall. He's been here for 6 weeks. He had the 5-year role. He had to go work somewhere else, but he's in here learning the business. And my daughter's off and they're doing well. That one decision, I would say I looked at financial disaster and I looked like it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's how the book starts off. So that's what the book's about. I already told you about the marriage book. That's coming out probably in 6 to 8 months. I think that one's probably more provocative than anything. Um, Hopefully we'll save some marriages there.
I bet you will, and, man, I love just your brutal honesty and good stuff there, Brent. I'll look forward to, checking out your book. I know you said you've got a little, PDF you were gonna send me as well, but sounds like a great book and a great story to start off with, you know? So, um, I could talk to you all day, Brent, but I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing up. It's been, it's been fun, man. I'd love to stay connected with you and, through your journey and as you continue to evolve. Um, Good stuff, man, especially, the whole thing was good,
Well,
and,
hey, this has been a blast. It went by in a flash.
yeah, we
Thank you
definitely
so
went a little
much
longer.
for having me on. And
Yeah,
I'd love to learn more about your business. I did some research before we started, but sounds like you run a great business.
I appreciate that, Brett. Same to you, and for any of our listeners that would love to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect with,
Yeah, you
Sirius
can
Plumbing
find me
these
at
days?
brentgarrett.com.
Yep.
And in the upper right hand corner, if you want to talk more or have a meaningful conversation about what's going on in your business, just click on that. We're not going to ask for a lot of personal information, just an email address and a name, maybe a phone number so we can contact you. And I have 30 to 40-minute conversations with business owners all the time. There's no hook to it. If we can help you, we will. If not, we'll give you a few ideas to go to work on your business. So, Todd, thank you so much. This was a
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah, no, thanks for being on. I'm glad we connected. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will be in touch soon.
Take care.
You too, Brent.